Okay, I think we will begin now. I'm sure more will join in the next few minutes, but let me begin with a very warm welcome, colleagues, to this CGIAR staff webinar. Kundavi, Elwin, and I have now been in place for about 6 months. We've had an opportunity to interact with many of you through the 2 previous webinar sessions, and also through a number of center town hall meetings and other conversations related to the One CGIAR transition. Rather than introducing ourselves again over the next hour, we have just 1 hour today, we will all share with you brief updates on our respective areas of work, each of which relate to our ongoing transition to One CGIAR. First, Kundavi on global engagement in this critical year, myself on the development of our research and innovation portfolio, and Elwin on our integrated operational structure. A reminder with the instructions that you see on your screen is that if you would like to hear this session in French, or you simply need to go to the bottom of your screen where you see the interpretation button and choose a language for simultaneous translation, whatever language you're most comfortable in. Colleagues, we have once again received a lot of questions in advance of this session. Thank you so much for that engagement and your thoughtfulness, and we'll provide our updates which will address many of these questions, as many as possible. And then we'll also pick up additional questions submitted live via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. During the session, we will again invite you to take a couple of interactive polls. To participate, we ask that you visit www.menti.com on your computer or on your phone and enter a code that we will put up on the screen when we have those polls. Today's session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the CGIAR website within the coming days for colleagues who were not able to join us. If you have any problems, any technical problems during the webinar, please write an email to events@cgiar.org. Before I say any more, let us take a first quick poll. The first poll is a simple one. We want to know what question what country you are connecting from. On the screen, you should see the address of www.menti.com and a 6-digit code to enter onto your phone or your computer when you go onto that website. Type the address and the code, and then give us your answer. And we will have all of the countries popping up in just a moment. Let's see where our quickest pollsters are located. Oh, India's fast. Kenya, Italy, Colombia, South Africa, Malaysia, Ethiopia, Egypt, South Africa, again, South Africa, Peru, Vietnam, Pakistan, Uganda, Portugal, Ghana, USA, Uganda, Morocco. Fantastic. Philippines and Italy, Sri Lanka. Marvelous. Marvelous. And as this mosaic of all the countries that we work in is still developing itself across our screen, it's a perfect segue to move to our first presentation by Kundavi, seeing our global presence here on the screen, to speak to us about global engagement in this coming and very crucial year. Kundavi, please.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Hi, colleagues. It's great to have this opportunity to directly engage with you all. There's so much to say, but I know in the interest of time, we'll capture some key highlights of what's happening in the global engagement. So in that sense, we'll cover some 3 major areas. One is, you're all wondering, why are we going about this One CG in a big way? So if you see that the vision was to have a stronger impact and be a global voice on research and innovation in transforming food, land, and water systems. And what I'm really excited to share with you is that is actually already happening. And you can see from some of the highlights that we have picked here in the slide here, that the message that the One CG and the EMTs and some of these big events is being picked up in the mainstream media, and the importance of research and innovation for development, and particularly agriculture research, technology innovation is really getting a lot of traction in the global stage. And that's actually quite an encouraging one. And that's one of the things the overall aspect of the 1CG was all about, being able to have a major role to contribute, inform, and shape the dialogue on food systems and climate change is one of the main aspects of this 1CG. So we are already seeing that, as you can see from some of the messages that we have put in the slide here. What we are also very pleased to share is some global players are very much supportive of this research innovation agenda of CGIAR, and also particularly with respect to the UN food systems work that is going on. Agnes Kalibata, who is the Secretary General Special Envoy on UN food systems, has been championing our case very strongly. She spoke about it in some of the global events, and also in a very well-featured Time magazine interview. She spoke about the importance of science and using that in transforming farming to both from the food systems angle and also from planetary boundaries. What are the sort of things that we need to be really looking at? And of course, the emphasis that Gates has provided is just so huge. As you know, he's one of the biggest champion for 1CG, and he was in the launch of the CGIAR new innovation, research and innovation strategy. He was very supportive of the role that 1CG is playing in globally, and has also been a strong voice in advocating for more funding in research and innovation, and more specifically for in supporting 1CGIAR as well. If some of you have read his recent book on climate, it's one of the bestsellers now. He covers CGIAR exclusively, 2-3 pages of it dedicated to that. So we have some big champions supporting our agenda as well. Now, the second aspect I really wanted to also emphasize was this is also comes in a time when there are some huge global events planned for this year. You know, the UN Food System Summit, the COP26. So it's also an opportunity for us to really use the CGIAR mission in terms of transforming food, land, and water systems, and use these events in a very substantive way. So we are very closely engaged with these events, and will be really using those opportunities to put our messages out there. Second slide. What I do also wanted to share with you was all this comes on the excellent work the CG system has over the years done. And it is 50 years, let's remember that too. It's a great moment to actually look back of all the achievements, and also use this as an opportunity to see how we can build on the successful work of what you have all been part of. Every CG research centers has contributed to all the great innovation and technology and ideas that have been generated over the years. So we are using a whole lot in terms of the building on that message, and communicating very broadly in terms of what are those innovations in those 5 impact area of CGI new strategy and innovation, that we are really putting that out as well. So in that sense, you have all been extremely helpful in communicating this out broadly, but it also provides that excellent basis for us as well to make our case why research and innovation is so very critical for the UN Food System Summit, and also for the COP26 agenda as well. So again, I just wanted to use this opportunity to thank you all for that excellent work that has happened in the last several years, and also use this moment how we can build this for the future. Now, another strong message, which is also something you're all wanting to know, next slide, is all this comes at a time when you're also asking, and in the previous conversations that we have had with you, you have also asked, is this all translating this 1CG reform into more funding, more pooled funding? Because you have said for us to do good, high quality work, we need reliable funding, more long-term funding, not every year trying to run around and mobilize funding. And that's why One CG is built on this larger emphasis on more and pooled funding. So what I'm very pleased to share with you at the last System Council meeting last week, we had a group of funder champions who really led this message and commitment and put a strong message at the System Council meeting for more and pooled funding. I don't want to go through each one of these things, items listed out in this slide here, but what it really brings to you is that the funders are fully behind this key commitment in terms of bringing more funding to CGIAR and also for us to be able to do high quality work. So in that sense, even the conversation following that commitment and put forth by these funder champions, there was a whole lot of support from other funders, and we really have a good basis to move our work forward, particularly with respect to the reform deepening in this year. We have a good basis. You will hear a lot from Claudia later on the innovation, the initiatives, the design of it that is actually deepening. So it is all coming together very nicely. So these are the sort of a larger set of messages I wanted to share with you, seizing the momentum globally and trying to use those opportunities to shape the dialogue and also put research and innovation front and center in these global conversation, and also using the strategy and the operational design implementation that comes about to really stabilize ourselves to move forward. Let me stop there and again move to a set of questions. I wished it was a much more a possibility to take a lot of live questions, but we have already got some questions submitted by our team, so I'll go straight to that and see if we can start picking some of them directly from the questions that are submitted. I'm looking at here. One of the questions that came about was from Mohammed Mamoon and Rashid from Worldfish. And this was on the, how is the investment case for One CGIAR different from today's CGIAR? And why do you think funders support it? Again, a good question. If we really, all of us who are in this development area, we all recognize now the sort of looking at development in a much more integrated way. There's no way we can be in silos addressing issues separately, but we need to bring it all together. And that was also the reason the One CGIAR is built on this larger mission with focus on impact, bringing a unified governance and integrated operational structure through a new research modality that helps us to bring the policy, the technology, the capacity of CGIAR from all across the system together to be able to have that impact. So in that sense, to be really relevant and impactful in today's world, we need to be much more effective and efficient. And that's why we are also bringing this new research strategy and the integrated operation structure. And there is a full support of the funders and the key set of stakeholders that we are working together with. So in that sense, what you would really see is the way we would do business will be very different. You will hear from the initiatives that Claudia will talk about later. In the design of these initiatives also will be very different. So all of this is to say, we need to be relevant to today's issues. We need to be more impactful. And therefore, in that sense, how we can really be able to develop our programs to really respond to issues on the ground. Again, I also wanted to emphasize the partnership. It's not about One CGIAR and the research teams across here, but also the partners on the ground. Another question that came about was, could you describe the funding outlook for this year and the next? What are we hearing from funders? I think that's the third slide that I shared with you speaks largely to this question. But the point I want to really emphasize was a lot of work was done to firm up the 2021 investments to CRPs. And this was so very important to stabilize, and particularly in a transition year. And we are all faced with COVID, which is having huge challenges on the budgets and the pipeline. So in that sense, 2021, we have been able to stabilize. And what you saw in the slide that I presented, where the funders are also committing to, is the next 3 years, that is 2022 to 24, that we are expecting at least up to 1 to 1.4 billion in pooled funding. And that provides that stability that we are looking for. Again, I also wanted to emphasize there is a team of resource mobilization and communication and advocacy team working very closely. This is not just in the systems office, but across the CG system, trying to see how we not only build our pooled funding, but also bilateral funding. So we feel quite confident that it provides us a very strong basis, and a lot depends on how we bring that to a very exciting set of initiatives to move this forward. Let me just take one more question, and I'm mindful of the time as well. How are we engaging with national governments and other national and regional level partners and stakeholders on the One CGIAR transition? This is coming from UD and other ERI and others. Great to hear from you, UD, long time. Again, this is such an important question, and for me, I feel very close to things that are happening on the ground because of my past work, largely working with the national government and national stakeholders. What I'm really pleased to share is we have in the System Council regional representatives, and they have been involved in a lot of these high-level work that's going on. There was their engagement in the regional, the development of the 2030 Research and Innovation Strategy, and also in all our consultation that we have been having with the regional and national partners leading up to that strategy. They have been a big part of it. And even in the operational structure discussions, we have been briefing them and getting their excellent input as well. Even as part of the implementation of the integrated operational structure, we will be deepening that engagement. You will also hear from the initiative design when Claudia presents that, how we are incorporating the demand side of it, so that it is not what we have to offer, but how is it aligned to the needs and priorities of the countries. Now, is this enough? Certainly not. We can do more. And that's why the operational structure will be a very important aspect that we can actually bring. You know, under the new operational structure, you will have the regions, the countries more strongly represented there to be aligned to the voices of the countries and the national partners. And that's where a more deeper engagement and alignment will come about, so that the way we do our work and deliver our business will also be much more aligned to the country priorities. I'm also looking at the time, so I'll just find out, Claudia, am I on time? Do you want to take this?
Oh, right on time.
Okay,
for us to transition.
Absolutely. Let me then move it back to you, and I can come in later if there is any other question.
Great, thank you so much, Kundvi. It's an exciting year ahead. And what I'd like to move to next is update on the research and innovation portfolio, our new investment plan, which is very much a topic of development this year that we are co-creating, we across the CG, along with our partners. So this first slide reminds us of the context of the investment plan. You see on the left-hand side, there are really 3 documents that will be encompassing and laying out the focus of our work under One CGIAR. So we have the 2030 Research and Innovation Strategy, which was approved in December by the board and the council. And this lays out our 10-year vision. It lays out the vision of what the CGIAR will contribute to the SDGs, the big changes that we want to be a part of. That 10-year vision is going to be implemented through these 3 3-year investment plans. So these rolling investment plans are the vehicles that we will use in order to deliver our 2030 strategy, our big picture strategy. To guide us, our navigation system as we move through these investment plans, both within the investment plans and then of course as we develop each subsequent investment plan, we have our new performance and results management framework, which is for those of us who like these things, a really exciting framework that will give us a tremendous amount of information to help us understand where the needs are greatest and where we're making the greatest difference. So it's these three sets of documents that will be helping us to direct our energies. And the work that we do will be organized across the three action areas that were laid out in the research and innovation strategy, and that will also structure our investment plan. So those three action areas, if you recall, were systems transformation, which is sort of the meta level, policies, planetary boundaries, the big the enabling environment construct economically, biophysically, socially. Then the second action area is resilient agri-food systems, which is the meso level. This is the farming systems, the production systems, the mixed use systems where production takes place. And then at the micro level, genetic innovation, where we're down into our serious plant and animal science, our gene banks, our seed systems, and all the genetic innovation tools that we bring. Next slide. So that's the framework within which we are structuring the investment plan. And we are actually on track. We are well on track to deliver as we had promised to do back in a year ago. We had promised to deliver an investment plan in May to our board and in June to our council. Throughout this process, these slides are a little dense, I know, but we have a series of teams who are working, teams that bring in the engagement of our directors general and many of our science leadership across the CGIAR. These groups are building on the work of the transitional advisory groups, the tags that were active last year this time, the informal advisory groups that were undertaken in November, December last year. And now we're working with a group of investment advisory groups, these IAGs, these IAGs, which include our scientists as a technical team. They include representatives of our funders, our stakeholders, and external experts as well, who are advising the EMT on the set of initiatives that we want to put forward for design. So these investment advisory groups, with the support of our scientists in technical teams and other experts that we have brought in, are now at a stage where we have the broad outlines, the contours of our first investment portfolio, which we will now begin to design in detail, because of course the title of an initiative leaves a tremendous amount of work ahead of us to really define the portfolio. So for each one of these initiatives, initiative design teams are being developed. We're hoping as early as next week to be able to begin to move forward with leads and co-leads for those initiative design teams. So together, those initiative design teams, with the support of these investment advisory groups and the technical teams attached to those groups and the EMT, will put together this prospectus, the concepts for about 36 large CGIAR initiatives that will be included in the investment plan and eligible for funding. There will also be within this fast-tracked initiatives, because different initiatives are at different levels of development. We're building on a lot of what we have done. And we want to make sure that we have adequate portfolio to move forward with strength and momentum. So our best estimate is that the CGIAR initiatives that will be ready to launch in January of 2022 will be very close to or larger than the current volume of CRPs in our portfolio. And additionally, we will have these other prioritized initiatives ready to launch on a rolling basis over the 3-year period as we grow. Last week, we had a system council meeting, and the funders really emphasized that the new portfolio needs to build on the excellent work underway today across the CRPs, and we're working to do that, to build on the achievements of the CRPs and some of the excellent ideas that are in the pipeline. And what we expect is that we will have a mix in this new portfolio of both large-scale regional integrated initiatives that have a clear vision of changes they want to see in specific regions. But we will also have then 5 to 10 different thematic or global initiatives within each of the action areas. So a portfolio of about 3 dozen. And each one of these initiatives will be queried and designed to make a difference in all of our 5 impact areas. The 5 impact areas of the research and innovation strategy, working across our 3 impact pathways as well. So it's science and innovation, it's targeted capacity building, and it's policy as well. Of course, in addition to this investment plan, which is the shared funding portfolio, we also anticipate continued and growing bilaterally funded work as well. So continued robust portfolio as we move forward into to the 2022 to 2024 investment plan period. We have several questions that have come in terms of the investment plan, because I know people are quite interested, and there'll be much more information available in the coming weeks, as I mentioned, as we stand up these initiative design teams and we really begin to dig into the substance of the new portfolio. Hopefully many of you will be involved in that, and we appreciate in advance the effort that we will put into developing this portfolio together. So a couple of the questions that we have received. We have a combined question we have combined from Elliot Dosoyovu and Dan Gilligan, asking questions around what are the initiatives likely to be selected for the first transitional period? What is the schedule for approval and start date for initiatives that are not fast-tracked? So the initiatives are being essentially selected and sequenced by EMT, by the executive management team, based on advice from the investment advisory groups, and also will depend very much, of course, on the work of these initiative design teams. And the first set to go forward will be designed and commissioned by the EMT within the next week or so. We're hoping that those teams will begin their work. All of the initiative designs will progress essentially at their own pace, because, as I said, some build very strongly on work that has been done to date, some are very new. And so what we expect is that those that have that are building on the strongest base will be ready first, and that the others, as they become as they are fully articulated and as funding is approved, they will go forward. But again, the big picture in terms of the timing will be that the investment portfolio as a set of prospectus will be confirmed in June. After the confirmation, that will have been received from the system board and the system council. Then each one of the full prospectus, when those are finished, the full proposals will be cleared again for funding, so that this first group comes on in January. And we do expect probably a dozen, probably a third of the portfolio to come on in that first year, rolling thereafter, depending on the state of development. What's important to recognize here is that as we have mentioned, that amount of the volume of the portfolio that would be launched in January 2022, we believe will keep up the full volume of work that the system has been delivering. And it won't in any way curtail our work on bilaterally funded projects. At least in the first couple of years, we're hoping to see much more pooled funding, much more of these large initiatives that we can all work on together, much fewer transaction costs, much less time spent developing and reporting on individual smaller projects. But at least in the transition, it is really important to suggest that, that bilaterally funded research will continue. It is a priority, of course, for us to continue to deliver everything that we are committed to, and the strong science quality is non-negotiable. Other questions. Here's a question from Rajiv Sharma. Have you prioritized countries and regions for CGIAR's work? Will some countries or regions be left out? No countries or regions will be left out. The CGIAR will be working across all of the 6 regions as we define them in the regional, in the research and innovation strategy. So that's Latin America and Caribbean, West and Central Africa, East and Southern Africa, Central and West Africa, Central and West Asia and North Africa, Guana, and South Asia, and the Southeast Asian and Pacific countries as well. So all of those areas are ones in which we would have these focused regional integrated initiatives that really build on the strengths and really address the priorities and vulnerabilities of those regions. Those regional initiatives are likely to be framed in the context of a lot of the adaptation and challenges and mitigation opportunities, a lot of the climate framing, but again, designed to address all 5 impact areas that we're eager to contribute today to. Wherever CGIAR works today, that work can also continue. Again, the bilateral portfolio will continue, and we want to make a contribution wherever we can make an excellent contribution and where the needs are greatest. So in the first 3-year investment plan, we want to assure you that we will prioritize our work in line with the most important needs, most urgent needs and opportunities in each region, but still maintaining our global footprint. Some interesting live questions are coming in. Fitzimahegos is asking about how these regions and countries will be represented in the IAGs. So these IAGs, they're quite a small group. Those groups are, they consist of a couple of funders, a couple of external experts, and a couple of regional representatives. So equal numbers from those 3 groups. And those regional representatives in countries are being represented by the representatives from our system council who know the CG well, who have been serving that function of conveying regional and country demand in the CG for a few years now. We have a question come in from Alexander about whether initiatives can span over 2 or more regions. Absolutely. So what we imagine again in the portfolio is that we would have at least 1 large integrated project per region, maybe 5 or 6, right, for the different regions, but then another 30 or so initiatives, probably equally divided across the 3 action areas that will be thematic or global. And those, again, they would span across regions. What we're hoping to do with the portfolio is really knit it together in a way that the global and thematic work will be uptaken into the regional initiatives, and the regional initiatives will help us to find the demand and refine the initiatives that we're looking at in the global and thematic space to make sure that we're asking the right questions and that we're producing the right science and we're looking for the right innovations. So we hope that it'll be very much an iterative process as we work through both the design and development of the portfolio, but also as we implement. I can take one more question as we, getting on time here. One question came in from Karen Marshall. Is there a risk of losing staff continuity between the CRPs and the rollout of the initiatives due to funding gaps? And I know that that is a real concern in any transition in any organization. But again, the portfolio that we're looking at now and the very positive funder outlook that Kundavi has just spoken to you about suggests that we will have at least the same volume of work available, funded in the system in the new portfolio that we have had under the CRPs. And we are looking as we develop the portfolio to ensure that we have that we minimize any disruption in the transition across the research work that we do. We have the space, and we are looking to manage that transition in a way that really keeps our scientists busy and moving across this transition. So we'll be working very hard in the coming weeks with these initiative design teams to look at the ways in which we can deploy all of our scientists globally into this new portfolio and really build on the incredible strength that we have in the system and the incredible work that has been done under the CRPs. Let me stop there. So many good questions, all of which we hope to answer in this and in future webinars. But let me turn now to Elwyn to speak to us about the new organizational structure that will be coming online. Elwyn, please.
Thank you, Claudia. A lot's happened since we last spoke. There's been a really wonderful set of inputs made to the operational structure. We set up these design working groups later last year, and there was a tremendous amount of input provided through that process. They were led by DGs or senior staff across the centers, and it really stress tested and validated this structure. And the clear message coming out of that is we can make this work. That enabled us to submit to the system board a paper on the operational structure, which they unanimously approved. And then we submitted it to the System Council, which they strongly and unanimously endorsed. So we have a green light to do this. And this here is really ambitious, and that's widely acknowledged. This is, this is not the half measure change. This is really going for something that we think sets us up for a whole new way of doing business that really makes use of the wonderful skills we've got right across the CGIAR, and that we think will have the best possible impact on funding our continued work. That was a great question someone asked. I think it was Anthony Brewer about, are there traditional funders that don't support this? No, they all support this really strongly. Sure, anyone one speaks to has questions about this or that, and there's a lot happening. So we had a great discussion at the System Council, it was last week, about this, and then there was strong support and a bunch of questions that we answered. So there's been a lot of work, a lot of progress, a lot of decisions being made. Just to recap, the operational structure is about putting together the wonderful skills we've got into manageable groups of skills and services, so that we can deliver the most possible towards achieving our mission. At its center, there are 3 science groups which put together our skills on system transformation into one science group led by a global director. And that includes actually coordinating these impact area platforms, which are so important that run across so much of our work and across all 3 science groups. There's the resilient agri-food systems, putting together a lot of our skills in different parts of CGIAR into one clear group there. And similarly on genetic innovation, putting together the great professionals we've got on, say, breeding and gene banks and some other areas together into one group, all delivering both our business which is funded by bilateral funding, but also pooled funding. One structure, one decision-making structure for all sources of finance, one governance structure for all sources of finance. So the question about CRPs and whether we bring the CRPs into this, I mean, the skills are absolutely here in this new model. We're going to need our people to deliver this new portfolio. But what we're not going to have is a whole cluster of different management systems for different parts of our funding model, which can create some confusion. On institutional strategy and systems, a clear line from this to the recommendation of the system reference group that we're going to pull together our professionals on digital services, on business operations and finance, on governance and assurance, and people and culture, to deliver a really high quality universal service across this new operational structure. And a lot of excitement there, and understandable anxiety actually, because all this is change, but a real potential to take our professionals that we have and turn that into really strong global services that are really the best available to support the research delivery. Same principle applies to global engagement and innovation. 3 groups plus a regional structure innovative finance and resource mobilization, partnerships and advocacy, and communications and outreach. Real potential there to maximize our global brand, and to maximize our center brands, to maximize our ability to fundraise bilaterally through pooled funding, to maximize our ability to engage with the government at a really high level, so that we have one CGIAR represented, to really pull together the great bunch of colleagues we have at the country level, so there's a clear, coordinated dialogue at the country and regional level. So that's the model. We now need to move forward and implement it. We're going for the next layer of design now, colleagues. We've set out the destination to some level of detail. We're now continually evolving that, but we're focusing much more on the transition, how we're going to make this transition. Next slide, please. A key question that people are reasonably asking is, well, what does this mean for the centres? Where are the centres in this? The answer is that the centres are the foundation. They're the material through which we create one CGIAR. And we really want to honour that amazing legacy of years of work and partnerships and skills built up. So what this structure does in terms of people, it takes the skills we've got and aligns them into something that we hope will make us far more than the sum of our already excellent parts. So we want to build on and use the capabilities and people we have across our current system of centres. On fundraising, we want to have a structure that I said manages all different sources of finance and actually seeks to optimize those sources of finance. And that means that we will still be encouraging people to seek bilateral funding. We'll try and do that in a way where we perhaps compete a bit less with each other, sometimes where we put together more joint bids, where we try and collectively raise up and negotiate collectively things like the overhead rates, etc. But we're still going to need bilateral funding. We will be honouring and cultivating and nurturing centre brands. Those have value, and we need to use them. And the global engagement group, with support across the system, will be working with DG and others about mobilising those brands where we need to. And we will still be honouring and respecting the centre legal agreements. The centres will remain as legal entities, even though the operational structure will not be anchored around those legal entities, in the sense that we'll be dividing up the research business necessarily and exactly along the contours of those legal structures of centres as they are today. And remember, colleague, that the reasons for that were that the agenda has moved on so far over the last 50 years since we were structured, that we do need a more integrated structure. Last slide, I believe, and I'll come to a few quick questions. I'm not going to go into detail on all of this because it'll take us beyond the hour. There is a tight schedule of work. We're trying to deliver this transition as quickly as possible because we really recognize the anxiety it creates, and that we'd all like to know where we're going to be sitting in this new arrangement, how it will work. We don't want to do it too fast, but we don't want to do it too slow. It's a fine line we're treading on now. On the recruitments process, Anna Marquez, you asked a good question on that, is how will the recruitments be done for senior positions? That's a top priority, and it's actually the top row here. What we'd really like to do, and we have approval as of last week from the system board around this, is to move quickly in identifying where the DGs could and should play a role in the leadership positions of this new structure. The challenge for us in CGIAR is not we don't have great leaders, it's that we'd like to wire this a little differently to get the best out of those brilliant people. So that'll be a first priority, is have a discussion and a process around which we can add a clear role in the new operating structure to our DG roles. Then we will quickly and in parallel for some of the most senior positions where those are not filled by DGs, we will go to a process of competition, but it'll be fast because we really want to fill some of these top roles around global global directors and some of the regional directors that are not already filled quickly with people to play that leading role in managing this transition. And there'll be another phase of positions around the senior director level that we would need to fill. We'd like to do that by, say, June. And then there'll be a process around remaining positions, many of which there are already people doing those jobs, and we need to just continue that. So it's really essentially around validating and clarifying and making clear that whole units are moving into this structure. And we don't need and have no intention to make everybody reapply for their jobs. There's no sense in that. Some of the top levels, we need to have a process where we need to take a look at that. And I've just mapped that out in very broad terms. So, and I hope that answers your question. We need to clarify this for the top positions as quickly as possible. Eric, you asked about, Eric Magembe, when staff would be informed about their alignment with the global groups. That's somewhere on this chart too, around really a process of identifying where staff would sit in this new structure. We'd like to do that by June. And really that is about making sure everyone's clear that all staff have a stake and belong to this new structure. This is about all of us moving forward together. In addition to that and beyond that, there will be a process of incrementally looking at reporting lines, mainly of the more senior staff and group leaders and unit heads. And we need to figure out how and when that will take place and how we transfer those accountabilities and responsibilities. So we see that happening over the second part of the year and are working intensively on that right now. There is an extensive process of risk management around this with key risks that we're trying to manage. We will be doing this as professionally, in a professional way. And key risks around continuity of support, continuity of the provision of services are something we're actually working through with the leaders of the centres right now, so we can map out in each subject area exactly how we're going to do this. I believe I've tackled some or most of those questions, Claudia. Perhaps back to you. There was a question on delivery of projects in the new structure, and then maybe I'll pick up one or two remaining, please.
Great. Yes, we had a question about how the transition will take place, the transition of accountability for project delivery. And as Elwin has explained, in the new structure, when it's completely in its destination phase, the science groups, these 3 science groups, action areas, will become the operating units for research delivery. So the accountability for all delivery will be with the science groups, regardless of the funding source. The accountability will be transferred to these science groups that pull our capabilities across all of one CGIAR. So our research staff will be affiliated with the most relevant science group from, as Ellen was saying, about June this year. But that won't immediately impact reporting lines or accountability when this affiliation begins. The transfer of reporting lines and accountabilities will happen gradually, as we absolutely do not want to disrupt the delivery of ongoing projects. We will need to do this carefully and in a very pragmatic way. So how we transition, how quickly we transition will necessarily have to be assessed on a project by project and center by center basis to ensure business continuity. In the destination, it'll all move to these science groups, but in transition, we will work together to make sure that it is done as smoothly and appropriately as it can be. Back to you, Elwin. I see
Yes,
you've got a lot of
quick things. Yeah, will there be a uniform salary structure across all of CGIAR? Hilal, Abdullahi and others asked that question. We are working towards putting together a common HR policy with a common approach to salary structures, working with Birches and others. So we would like to get to that point. Might take a bit of time to do it, but that's definitely our aspiration. Luz Castaneda and others asked which centres have not yet joined one CGIAR. what are the implications? There's a couple of centre boards that have not decided to join or as yet. I need to be respectful of those centres in this discussion because we have not gone through there's not been a public announcement of this. So I'm not going to get into sort of direct naming, but we are working this through now. The key point here is we're not dropping those agendas in our research strategy. It's really important that we carry on working with them. The other key point is that whatever happens, those centres remain part of one CGIAR this year, and we continue to honour the delivery of the CRPs that they manage and engage them in discussions about management of the portfolio this year. And lastly, that the door remains open. We really hope that everyone joins one CGIAR, and that we think there's a great opportunity for the agendas that all centres are pursuing in this new model. There was another question about whether there'll be a 2022-2024 CGIAR business plan, as we did over the last 3 years. Absolutely, yes. That'll be, in a way, knitting together these at a high level, the investment plan, the transition plan, our 3-year financial plan. We'd aim to get that to our council by the end of this year, but I think we've got to get those building blocks ready first. Back to you, Claudia.
Thank you, Elwyn. So we're coming to toward the top of the hour here, but we wanted to move on to one more topic on stepping up our communications and engagement. If we can pull up those slides right now, and actually let me turn back to Elwyn for a moment on communications moving forward.
Look, on this, we appreciate, we're really trying to do a lot more communications. There's so much happening, and we want you to know about it. We want people to be assured of the kind of things that are happening and have access to the right information about what's going on. So we're increasing the frequency of staff webinars to at least bi-monthly, a couple of months here. We are reverting to a monthly newsletter starting this month with updates on progress about what's happening. We are launching an all-staff SharePoint site this month to share internal resources on the transition, so you can get hold of key documents we might be referring to. We are continually updating our landing page and resources on cgiar.org. And we're doing a lot more centre town hall meetings and dialogues. We've been doing that for some time, but actually what we're doing now is setting up a series of discussions centre by centre to really start working through the implications of this operational structure at the centre level. So we're setting up discussions with the management teams of all centres over the next few weeks to start to continue that discussion and deepen it. But obviously always open to suggestions on how we can do better on this. I think when we have the leadership level appointed, I think that will also really help in terms of clarity and consistency of communications around this too. Claudia, back to you.
Thanks, Elwyn. We really are committed to try to communicate as best we can in the coming months. We realize that there are answers we don't have yet as we move through this process together. But let me say that all of the questions that are asked, even if we can't answer them, which we apologize that we may not have time or answers yet, every question that you ask helps us to navigate the transition forward. So we capture everything that you've sent in. We've captured all of the live Q&A, and this really helps us to focus our energies and prioritize our work in this really exciting transition. So at this stage, I would, in that spirit, like to actually run one more Menti poll, which is to ask you about your preferences for future webinars and communications. As Ellen has just said, we're looking at many different vehicles to continue our communication, but the topics of those communications, we would like to target to those things that matter most to you or that you have the greatest questions regarding. So if you can go again to www.menti.com, These are different codes that you can enter in to help us with this poll. And let us know what we should focus on in future communications. And as this is happening, let me thank you again. We'll be sharing the results on the screen, but we very much appreciate the high levels of engagement that we have in these webinars and all the different teams and task forces that so many of you are contributing to the process through with work that really does help us to guide the way forward. As a reminder, there will be a recording of this session that will be made available on the CGIAR website in the coming days. You can share it with friends who may not have been able to join the webinar today. But a final real thank you. Yes, no, these are the issues that are popping up on the screen now in terms of future communications are exactly the issues that are very much front of mind for us now, about opportunities, the initiatives, the new investment portfolio initiatives, whether the funding will keep us going strong, which we really do believe that it will, and how we will make that transition and communicate that with all of you. So this is very, very useful. Again, we will be capturing all of this feedback and using it to focus our work going forward. But thank you once again for this opportunity to engage with all of you. We look forward to staying in even closer touch as we move into 2021. As we began with Kundavi, this is a year of tremendous importance for the CG. It's also a year where food systems are absolutely front and center, not just in the UN Food Systems Summit, but hopefully also in the climate dialogues and the biodiversity dialogues. And we really look forward to stepping up as one CGIAR, making your science heard in all of these really important global engagements. And as we introduce the world to one CGIAR. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. Be well, take care, and we'll see you very soon again. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.